All right, everyone, welcome back to episode 28 of Conservative Roundup. Today we're joined by Brad Redekop, the MP for Saskatoon West. Thanks for being here, Brad. It's great to have you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Saskatchewan, grew up in Yorkton, a town about 3 hours away from Saskatoon. I graduated with a commerce degree, worked for about 20 years in industry, in a farm machinery company, working within that company as an accounting person, and eventually rose to be in charge of all the accounting and ultimately in charge of the company for a while. And left there, and at that time I think I had about 1,100 people working for me. I went and started my own business where it was just me, so kind of one extreme to the other. And that was in home building. I did that for about 13 years and enjoyed that very much. But also, I had always wanted to get into politics, and didn't want to do that without some experience, some real world life experience. And so as I was kind of coming into a natural break point in my house building a business, it was time for me to make politics. I was very frustrated with what Justin Trudeau had been doing in our country. And so that really prompted me to give me the kick I needed to get into it. And so here I am today.
And that's why you wanted to join politics?
Well, it's something that I'd always wanted to do. I felt like I'm a leader. I want to help the community. I want to help the country. And like I said, it was just watching the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, in my opinion, take the country in the exact wrong direction that really prompted me to say, okay, now's the time. I need to jump in. If nobody else is going to jump in, then I need to do it, because we have to change this, change the direction of this ship.
We have a saying here in my family is with Justin Trudeau's 2019 slogan: "Choose forward, we choose backwards." Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, that's for good.
MP Redekop, I was just wondering if you had any future goals of being for an MP.
Well, that's a great question. Well, obviously, I'd like to see us in power. This is, there's so much frustration, especially in Western Canada, with the various things that are going on in government, whether they be, carbon taxes or the direction of oil and gas industry, environmental policies, and other things like that. All of which are good things, but need to be done in the right way. And it seems, from our perspective in the West, they're all being done the wrong way. So what I like to tell people, and it's the truth, is that we can't change any of these things until we're in power. And so, the number one goal or dream that I have is that we would get into power, because then we could start to see some of these changes. And obviously, my goal is that I'd like to be part of that, and I'd like to be part of that conversation and have an impact in both developing those changes and actually implementing those changes into the country.
Mm-hmm. And being from the West yourself, how do you feel about the Trudeau government's treatment of the Canadians out West?
Well, along the lines of that same conversation, a lot of the people that I talk to, they always go back to the former Trudeau, Pierre Trudeau, and talk about the feelings that they had when he was Prime Minister, and the way that he had this knack of just alienating the West, and just, everything that he did seemed to go against what we stand for here in the West. And Justin has just picked right up where he left off and created that same feeling, and people just really feel that right in their core. And the solution is to get rid of this Trudeau, just like we got rid of the last one.
Mr. Redekop, what do you feel is your biggest accomplishment so far?
As a parliamentarian?
It doesn't parliamentarian or just in general.
In general, I think I've been married to my wife for over 35 years. I should actually know the exact time, because that's going to come back to bite me at some point. But a long time, and raised two really great boys. And so, to me, very important. It is the core structure of our culture and our country, and we need to have a strong, powerful family units. And so, I'm very. My career, I did well, and so lots of things to be proud of there. And as this whole experience as an MP, it's very new, and it's been almost entirely done under the guise of COVID. And so it's very hard to kind of equate what I've been through to other MPs, and there's been certain things happen during this period, but most of everything we've done has been related to COVID.
Oh, sorry, it's just my Wi-Fi for a second. Now my next question is, why? No, obviously you come back to Humboldt. Actually, going through your record, you were involved in the homeless shelters. What do you think Justin Trudeau is done to help homelessness in Canada?
Well, it goes back to the Conservatives, actually. We started a program for providing funding for homelessness, and I was quite involved in that prior to getting involved in politics through an organization called The Bridge on 20th, which is here in Saskatoon. And so in Saskatoon, we created a group of people from all kinds of different organizations and businesses and things to come around this issue of homelessness in Saskatoon. And the Conservative under Harper started this program of funding money that was essentially given to the local community, and there was an organization put in place to manage the distribution of that money. But it wasn't really the government that decided where it went; it was a local group that decided where that went. And so that has actually had very good results here in our city. Of course, there's a long ways to go. That it's a huge problem, and we've only begun to understand it. But that was the start, and so that program has carried on under the Liberals, and so that's a good thing because it's something that's very much needed in the city. And there's been a few other initiatives. Just recently, there was the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is an offshoot of the homelessness strategy, and that was a program designed to create to take something like a hotel, for example, that isn't really being used, and convert it into usage as a homeless shelter or as a place where people who don't have homes can live right now. And I think it's a great idea. Unfortunately for Saskatoon, where I live, there was $1 billion allocated to this program, but none of that money made it into Saskatoon. It all went into other cities. And so we have great needs for that here in the city. But unfortunately, the Liberal government decided not to funnel any of that money into Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm. Is there any work that you want that is coming up that you would want to put it forward? Is homelessness or crime or your work on the environment committee? Is there any upcoming work that you're working on?
Well, in terms of the homelessness issue, it's a very pressing issue here in Saskatoon, as it is in many cities. And we have a certain population of people who are hard to house, and they tend to be the ones that cause work for the police department, for the fire department, for our healthcare system. And so when efforts are put towards resolving some of those issues and providing a place for those folks to live, it actually reduces the pressure on all those other areas. So that's an important thing. And you mentioned the environment, and that's also a huge issue in Saskatoon here. I've been able to work with, we have a Meewasin Valley Authority here in Saskatoon, which is, if you haven't been here, Saskatoon has a river that runs right through the center of Saskatoon, and it's parkland on both sides of that, and that's what we call the Meewasin Valley Authority. And so there's trails, biking trails, walking trails, etc. And we're always looking to upgrade and improve that park. It's a key, important part of the city, and so I've been proud to work with the folks over at Meewasin Valley and been doing some things with them to help get them more connected into the government, and ultimately working to get some government funding for some of the expansion plans that they have. And so that's been an exciting thing for me to help with as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
MP Redicop, I was just wondering if you had any political figures that you admired before when getting into politics.
Well, I really thought highly of Stephen Harper, our former Prime Minister. He's a person I have a lot of respect for. He's a very smart man and a lot of knowledge, especially when it comes to running the economy. And being from Saskatchewan and Saskatoon, you have to be a fan of John Diefenbaker. We have a center here honoring him, and he was one of our great leaders, I think. And so I often I do respect him a lot as well.
Perfect. And going over, since you're involved with the environment a lot, do you think how do you think Canadians can start reducing our carbon footprint and helping growing our environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no question that we have to reduce our greenhouse gases. I think we have to always remember that the goal is to reduce greenhouse gases. It's not necessarily to reduce carbon. I mean, that's one way to do it, but sometimes we get focused on reducing carbon. In Saskatchewan, we have a project here on a coal-fired power plant that uses carbon capture and storage technology. And actually, even though that plant burns coal to create electricity, it produces zero greenhouse gas emissions because it's all captured and stored underground. And so we have to remember that it's greenhouse gases is what we're trying to avoid here, not necessarily carbon. So that's part of the message that we have to take to the world, actually, is that we have technology here in Saskatchewan and Canada, and there's technology yet to be developed that will allow us to reduce our greenhouse gases. And that's, I think, an area where Canada can lead. And I think that's the other thing we have to also keep in mind is that Canada is a resource-based country. And so sometimes people get tied up in some of the comparisons with other countries and per capita numbers and things like that. But you have to remember that, and as you guys are all well aware, Canada is a very large country. So we have to transport things many miles. If it's going from Toronto to Vancouver, that's a lot of greenhouse gases and a lot of energy that's consumed to move that item from A to B. Same with if you're traveling, there's great long distances to travel, whether it's by car or by air, and so those things take energy. And we're a cold country. We've just come through winter. If we didn't have heat in our homes, that would be a bad thing. We would be in trouble. And so these are differences with Canada, but we don't need to be ashamed of those things. That's who we are. Because the flip side of that is that we also produce, because of that, we need to produce energy, right? And so we produce, some of the most environmentally sound energy, we have the highest human rights standards. We pay well, we have the highest environmental regulations. We produce the cleanest, safest, best energy in the world, and we should be proud of that. And so we should be the first in line to be exporting our energy all over the world. And if we do that right and export some of our technology and our know-how to other countries, we certainly have to reduce our own, that's for sure. But we can actually, Canada has such a small impact on the world when it comes to our greenhouse gases. But if we can magnify and multiply our technology into other places, into China, into India, we can punch above our weight. We can have a far greater impact in greenhouse gas emissions in the world than just our little bit here in Canada. So I think we need to remember who we are and be proud of that, and really work hard to help everybody in the world, not just ourselves.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Redekop, today the carbon tax went up again because it's April 1st. It went up today. How concerned are you that you and your constituents out west are that the carbon tax keeps going up?
Well, fundamentally, the carbon tax, in my view, is not an efficient way to deal with greenhouse gas emissions. The small increases that have been happening are an annoyance, if anything. They make everything more expensive. We talked about how cold it is in Canada and heating your home. It's a significant amount of money that gets charged on your gas bill to heat your house. And, if that was something optional that we could turn off, well, maybe, but it's not. And so to me, it's ridiculous that we're charging a carbon levy on, an old couple who can barely afford to stay in their house, and now they're paying an extra $30 or $40 a month for a carbon tax. It really doesn't change behavior, and even with driving, it's going to take a much larger amount of money to change that behavior. And we just feel that I feel that the real issue in terms of greenhouse gas reductions is there's some large emitters that are the big producers of greenhouse gases in our country. And those are the areas that we need to go for. We should go for the low-hanging fruit. And what the current government has done is they've gone after the politically easy thing to do, which is to create a tax. I mean, what government wouldn't like to create a tax? It just creates revenue and gives them options to do things, and it really doesn't do anything to slow down the environment, in my view, or very little. And so I'd rather see something that's aimed more targeted at the people that really make an impact and can make a difference, and leave grandpa and grandma alone so they don't have to suffer more with paying higher bills for heating their home.
For sure. Like, I think at the beginning, when the carbon tax first came, it was like an $1,100 increase per year for households. Now it's gone up like 400% or something like that. So it's too unaffordable.
Yeah. And it doesn't accomplish the goals that it's supposed to accomplish.
No. Sticking with issues here, what issues do you feel is most important in the upcoming federal election?
Well, no, I think number one, it's getting people back to work, and then right along with that is our economy. Those two go hand in hand, and so we need as you know, we have spent unbelievable amounts of money in the last year, and fair enough, there was a huge issue with COVID, and we had to do something, and so. I think if Conservatives had been in power, it would have looked a little bit different, but we would have still been forced to provide funding for individuals and companies. We would have done it differently, more efficiently, and things like that, but still would have had to do it. And so now we have to get to the point of how do we pay this back? How do we get the budget back into a reasonable place? Get that deficit worked, towards zero, because we know that we can't continually borrow money. That's not good for guys like you in the future. And so we have to get that under control. And at the same time, the way we do that is by getting the economy going. And when you get the economy going, that creates jobs. And so when I look around here in my city, the people that are suffering still are the ones who don't have the jobs. And, it's restaurant owners, it's the hotel owners, it's anybody in any sort of travel industry. And certain businesses are very much affected by this. And so we've got to get those jobs going again. We've got to get the economy humming again, which will create tax revenues and bring everybody up a level. That's what we need to do.
For sure. Thank you.
Now, coming back to your crime rates in Canada, you look at Saskatoon. It has crime has gone up recently all across every city in Canada, and you look at the Trudeau gun ban, and he's repealing all these guns. Oh, we're going to buy back your guns. We're going to buy them all back. Do you think that it has been proven that he's taking on legal gun owners. He's taking their guns away from legal abiding gun owners instead of going after the big crimes and gangs in across the cities across Canada. Why do you think he's not going after the gangs and the illegal border crossers that smuggle in guns into Canada? Why do you think that is?
It's right back to the same issue as the carbon tax. There's the easy, somewhat ineffective way to do it, which is the tax, versus the hard way, which is actually reducing greenhouse gases. And it's the same here in crime. That the ineffective, quote, easy solution is to go after law-abiding gun owners, firearms owners, and ask them to, jump through hoops, give up certain firearms, give up certain things they like to do. One of the things that they're targeting is airsoft for reasons that escape me completely. But, these strange regulations and rules to go after something that is rather ineffective, when the real issue, as you mentioned, is related to gangs. It's a far more complex issue and far more difficult to regulate. And the changes that they're proposing really won't impact that in a material way. And the really strange thing is that with Bill C-21, which is the firearms regulations, they're doing as you suggested, as I mentioned, making it more difficult for legal law-abiding folks to enjoy their firearms at shooting ranges and things like that. And it's even affecting, as I said, airsoft competitions, and which is a fun thing to do, to go and have an airsoft competition with your buddies. But then C-22 is another piece of legislation they introduced, which actually seeks to eliminate and reduce the fines and the consequences of using a firearm in a crime. And so it makes no sense that on the one hand you're penalizing legal law-abiding firearms owners, and on the other hand, in the next legislation, you're actually making it easier for a criminal to use a firearm to commit a crime. It makes no sense, and it just shows the illogical thinking that's going on in this government.
Like it's an airsoft gun. Like people go out, they have fun with those. Like same as the paintball guns. Like people go and have fun with those things. And you know what I admire from the States is their Second Amendment, right? Because that doesn't go after law-abiding gun owners. That goes after gangs. It's so sad to see Justin, and he takes advantage of a very tragic situation, such as the Nova Scotia tragedy a couple years ago, and he used that as a political advantage to repeal guns and introduce his first gun ban. What are your thoughts on him using those type of situations as a political advantage?
Well, obviously those situations are horrible, and they are, I wish they wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
They're always involving, a perpetrator who has a motive and who's a criminal. And, and I think in almost all cases, those firearms are stolen or they're acquired illegally, and they're certainly not registered. And they're also very emotional. They're very easy to tag onto, and so as it is sad, I think that a politician would take an emotional, very difficult time and then use that for political gain to do something. I just think that's wrong.
For sure. Thanks.
I was just wondering, what are your current thoughts on the whole, what's your current thoughts on, the impact that lockdowns are having on the economy?
Well, that's a great question. The lockdowns are having all kinds of impacts. Certainly on the economy. In fairness, there are some industries that are doing well. If you have anything to do with something at home, like gaming, or anything like that, those industries are doing well. But there's a lot of industries that are not doing well, and a lot of those are disproportionately skewed towards lower income, especially female jobs. Like the restaurant industry, the hotel industry. Those are industries that are really struggling right now and are going to take literally years to get back to where they were. And so the lockdowns are having a huge impact on that. And lockdowns are having other impacts as well, especially in mental health. It's an area that we sometimes forget about. And, there's, I think of people that I know that have not been able to get treatments for different diseases or somebody that has maybe signs that they may have cancer or something like that, and they're not able to get the help that they need from the medical system because everything's been skewed because of COVID. And so I think there's lots of impacts, whether they be health impacts, mental health impacts, job impacts, and just well-being. It's not healthy for I'll use the example of grandparents again to be sequestered away from their families and their grandchildren and their children. That's very hard mentally on people, and so that's had a huge impact, I think, in our country.
Perfect. Also, how would you kind of grade the Trudeau government's response for getting COVID vaccines into Canada?
D-, I would say. They talked a big game about ordering all these vaccines, which is great. Order away, but an order isn't all that much help unless you actually receive the product, and that's been the real measuring stick is are we actually getting vaccines into Canada? And Canada, I think last I checked, was in the 50s in terms of the rank in the world with vaccines, and I think in terms of the developed world, we're pretty much at the bottom of the pile, and that is just not acceptable, and our provinces are working very, very hard to get vaccines into people to try to get us back to normal, as we've been talking about, and they can only do that if they've actually got vaccines to put into people, and so that's been the federal government's job, and they're all proud to say how many they've ordered, but the reality is that we just haven't got very many vaccines yet into our country, and we're still way behind the rest of the developed world in getting our population vaccinated. So it's been a very poor job, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Redekop, what industry, like the oil and gas industry out west, where do you think just the Prime Minister has failed the oil and gas workers?
I think the fundamental area that's in trouble right now is the regulatory regime, and it affects much more than oil and gas. It affects all resource-based companies, and in fact, it affects nearly every company executive that's looking to invest money. When you run a large company or a small company even, you're always looking to the future. Where are we going? What's going to happen next? And generally, as you look at from a business perspective, when you look at things, you look towards investing money because it takes money to make money, right? That's an old saying. And so you need to build a factory, you need to build a mine, you need to build, whatever it is, or even simply investing in equipment. You need to buy new equipment or expand your equipment or build some sort of new technology. And so that's always what you're looking towards, you're looking towards the future as a business executive. And in Canada right now, we have a very unpredictable regulatory regime. So you may have permission, or you may think you have permission to build a factory or a mine or whatever in a certain place, and then halfway through, all of a sudden, it all changes. And actually, no, you didn't have permission, and so you have to stop everything and go back to the drawing board and spend another couple of years. And so this whole thing, we've seen it with some of the pipelines and some of the other larger resource-based projects in Western Canada in particular, and in Quebec as well. And so what that's causing is that business executives are saying, you know what, it's too complicated in Canada. There's too many unknowns. If I'm responsible for my business's money, for investors' money, I can't with good conscience spend that money in Canada because I don't know if it's going to work out. So I'm going to take that money and I'm going to go to, somewhere in Europe. I'm going to go to Australia. I'm going to go to South America. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to invest that money where there's a more stable climate. And to me, that's utterly ridiculous that a business executive would go and mine in, the former Soviet Union somewhere because they have a more stable business climate, a more stable regulatory regime than we do in Canada. That's embarrassing. It's utterly ridiculous, but that's the reality. And so that's causing a lot of stress, it's causing us to lose billions of dollars in opportunity here in Canada.
Sure. My follow-up question would be, if Aaron O'Toole gets elected as a government, let's say majority government, what areas should he focus on? Trying to recover that area.
Well, I'm sure you meant to say when he gets elected.
Yeah, when.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Well, as I said earlier, the initial immediate focus has to be on jobs. We have to look at the short term first, because we need to get people back to work. We need to get the economy going again, and so we talked about that before. Once that's kind of taken care of, then we have to fix this regulatory regime that we have. We have to put some confidence back into business so that they can, instead of investing money elsewhere, they can come back to Canada. They can spend their investment dollars here in our country, building those new factories, building those new mines, whatever it might be. Because that bodes well for the long term, right? We need that long-term investment from business in order to create those stable long-term jobs. So I think it's sort of a twofold thing. There's the short-term deal with that first, and then let's make sure that we've got the regime in place for the long-term investments to happen.
Sure, thank you.
And coming back to your D- rating of Trudeau's vaccine rollout, you look at the United States. They have so many vaccines they're giving them to zoo animals, and we haven't in Ontario. We haven't even reached 65 and over yet. We're still at 70 and over.
Yeah.
Why do you think that he's fallen so behind? He hasn't made any deals. He hasn't been on the phone. When you really look at it, Aaron O'Toole's been on the phone with the head of Pfizer and Moderna. Why do you think? What's your take on Justin Trudeau's rollout?
I think there's a general theme in all kinds of things, whether it be vaccine rollout, whether it be the WE scandal, whether it be acquiring ships for the Navy or fighter jet, whatever it might be. There's a theme here, and that theme is incompetence. This government finds it very difficult to actually get something done in an efficient and orderly way. They're really good at talking, they're really good at photo ops, but when it comes to actually executing something, to actually getting it done, that's where they fall short every single time. So it doesn't matter what the issue is. If you look into that issue, you'll see a lack of execution, which to me is just plain incompetence with getting something done. And that's why I think, as a business person, one of my, right back to the beginning, you asked why I got into politics. And as a business person, in business, you need to see the problem, you need to create a solution, and you need to execute the solution and get it done. That's how you achieve success in business, is by identifying the problem and then putting together a plan that's going to get you through that problem out the other side. And it's, there's a certain skill involved in that, and that's why people get involved in business. And for myself, that's what I experienced in my career as a businessman. And I want to bring that skill to government because I see that lacking so much in government. And when you look at the liberal side of the fence, they don't have that experience. They don't know. You look at the health minister, the all these ministers that are in charge of these problems right now, they have no real world experience in doing any of this kind of thing. So is it any surprise that they can't execute a plan? They can't even create a plan. You know, right now we're asking the Liberal government to give us a plan for how we're going to get past this lockdown situation, and they can't even give us a plan because they don't even know how to plan, let alone execute the plan once it's there. So that's the core of every problem that we've seen with the Liberals, is just incompetence and lack of ability to create a plan.
For example, you have Patty Haidu, a graphic designer, as the health minister. You have Christy Freeland, a journalist. And then you look at all these foreign affairs ministers who have no expertise in the field of foreign affairs at all. They don't even have business or economic degrees at all. Having like other people on the podcast, they've said that, well, obviously Justin Trudeau proclaims himself as the most feminist prime minister. He put all these women as parliamentary secretaries. They aren't even ministers at all. Like, he's just completely botched everything he's done. He can't even do anything right. Like, even I'm not a fan of Joe Biden at all, but I will give it to him. He even does things better than Justin Trudeau does.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are certainly a lot of different people, and, you know, it really doesn't matter if you're male or female or whatever. What matters to me is competence. Do you have the experience? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the ability? And sometimes people surprise you. You know, it's not to say someone that's a journalist can't make a great finance minister, but, you know, do we have that in Canada? I'm not sure. You know, sometimes a person does surprise you with their skills. So even that isn't necessarily a prerequisite, but the proof is in the pudding, as they say. So what are the results that we're seeing? Are we seeing amazing, awesome results, or are we seeing incompetence? And I think most of the time when we look at the Liberals, we're seeing incompetence.
For sure. Well, I know you are pressed for time, but I wanted to thank you for all your time today. I hope that we could do this again, and that it was really great doing this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the questions and enjoyed chatting with you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Redikoff, for your time.
Yeah. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks. You
Thanks,
too.
too.
You too.
And that was Brad Redikoff, the MP for Saskatoon West. Make sure to tune in on the next episode of Conservative Roundup.